We are now less than 2 months away from the European Parliament elections, which will take place from 6 to 9 of June. In the next weeks, thousands of candidates from across the 27 EU member states will compete for a seat in the European Parliament. 720 seats. One of the current MEPs who have been very active both in combating anti-Semitism and in support of Israel and the Abraham Accords is David Lega, MEP from Sweden. Thank you, David Lega, for being with us.
Thank you so much.
David Lega is a member of the European People's Party and a member until today of the European Parliament Foreign Affairs Committee. This is the new edition of the European report. We are going in this edition to look back at the last 5 years and the work of Mr. Lega, as well as look at the bigger picture of the Israel-EU relations, the picture of pro-Israel support in the European Parliament, which is very important for us. As we speak, and we take this opportunity that the European Coalition for Israel has just presented its second annual pro-Israeli vote ranking. And for this, David Lega will be joined by founding director of the European Coalition for Israel, Tomas Sandell. Thank you for being with us. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz from European Jewish Press and Europe-Israel Press Association. But before we go into the main topics of today's program, I would like to hear, because remember, two days ago, on the night of Saturday to Sunday, we have these unprecedented attacks from Iran against Israel. And I would like to know your takeaways, your thought about such attacks, Iran, as well as your what do you think about the stalemate of the situation today, and where we go from here, and where we can find a solution to all the Middle East problems. So first,
the little question.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's start with that.
So I will start with you, so David Lega.
And thank you for having me here. It's an honor.
Pleasure.
Well, the attack, as you rightly said, was unprecedented. That Iran, for the first time, launched rockets in their own name, not only using their proxies, Hezbollah or Hamas, but actually doing it through IRGC. And but that's not the only thing that was unprecedented in my view. The most important thing was that Israel did not stand alone for the first time. Not only by getting support and weapons delivered by other countries, but actually other countries actively helping Israel in their defense. Many other countries, both from the Middle East and the US, UK, France, helped. And that was unprecedented as well, which means that for the first time, we had a large joint defense of the State of Israel. And what we need to make sure now, in my view, is that we need to have a joint retaliation against Iran and what they did. This is what needs to happen after this one. So what we should do, we need to call for three things. And me and the EPP group will call for three things. We will call for, finally, a terror designation of the IRGC. That needs to happen. It's, for me, a mystery. The Parliament has pushed and voted for it so many times, and still Borrell has not done it. We need a terror designation of IRGC. We need a terror designation of Hezbollah in its entirety. It's time to finish the silly talk about a political branch of Hezbollah. And the third thing that we need to do is to directly reinstate all UN sanctions on Iran. That's what we need to do. That's a common and joint retaliation.
But when you just mentioned joint retaliation, so that you don't agree with the idea to have only Israel retaliating against
Well,
Iran.
the world changed when Israel didn't have to defend itself alone. We did a joint defense. It's quite natural that we do a joint retaliation. I mean, the whole basis and the whole funding of the Abraham Accords is a normalization of relations with Israel, but also an increased knowledge and awareness of the threat that Iran is facing, is actually being for the whole of the Middle East. And this is just a natural step.
We will speak later about this idea of joint defense.
Yes, but I'm so
and the effects
angry
of
after
EU-Israel
this
relations.
weekend, so I'm already there. This is what we need to do.
Thank you. Tomas Sandell, the same question for you.
Thank you, yes, Yossi. The same question and the same answers, I should say. I think David Lega put it so well, and if we'd only have more MEPs like this or policymakers in Europe, we would be in a very different place now. What we need to remember is also how we got to this stage. This is, as David said, it's the first time that Iran directly attacks Israel from its own territory. But of course, they've been playing this game for years and years and years in financing and training and equipping their terrorist proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, and now also the Houthis. And I've been repeated it time and time again in this program that, we should already years ago have come to the conclusion that, as David said, Hezbollah in its entirety should have been banned, and the IRGC clearly should be banned. And I think it's sometimes, naming names is helpful in an open democracy. And I think that it's such a pity when we have such a strong European leadership at the moment that there is this weak link with the High Representative for Foreign Policy, Joseph Borrell, who the first thing he did after the attack was to call Iran and just let them know that there won't be any real consequences. Since he has taken this stance that he wants to keep those lines open regardless the cost. Now I think the time has come also for Joseph Borrell to realize that he will need to choose sides, either on the side of the free world or on the side of the Islamic Republic.
This is a message, of course, to the EU foreign ministers that are meeting today,
yes.
I think. So it's a
Tomorrow,
message.
yes.
And tomorrow for the EU leaders that will discuss the Middle East situation. It's a message.
Absolutely.
So, David Lega, you have been one, and I said it in the introduction, you have been one of the most vocal MEP in the combat against anti-Semitism, which is rising since 7th of October, everywhere, I would say everywhere in the world, but also in your opposition to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Looking back at these last 5 years as an MEP in the European Parliament, what are for you your highlights in this period? What have been the most important thing that happened in terms of these topics? And have you been sometimes disappointed? I'm sure that you have been disappointed, but by what?
Yes. Well, I think we had many important wins during this mandate, not the least realizing an increased knowledge about the rising the threat of the rising anti-Semitism in Europe and internationally. And I think that the October 7 attacks unfortunately didn't create the rise of anti-Semitism, but it brought it to the surface. and that's extremely problematic. We've seen the rise for so many years, and now hopefully we're doing more. Even in my own country, in the city where I was born, in Gothenburg, in the city where I live close to now, in Malmö, Jews are advised not to wear their kippah, not to wear their Magen David. And for me, that is incredible that a rabbi of a congregation advises the people of the congregation not to wear their kippah. That tells you a bit about the level of the threat and the unsafety that so many Jews in Sweden are experiencing right now.
And Malmo is where the Eurovision Song Contest will take place.
In just a few weeks, we're going to have the Eurovision Song Contest.
Where also Israel, they were called to ban Israel from the Eurovision, and Sweden.
Yes, but there have been calls like that every year in every possible different thing, and that's completely absurd. Completely absurd. But I am so proud of the artist coming from Israel to take part in Malmö. That will show strength and resilience and what we as Jews are made of, I think. But the wins that we have, one is that we put conditionality onto the aid giving to UNRWA, not the least regarding the Palestinian textbooks, which were horrible several years ago already. And then now it's still on there, even after the October 7 attacks. Now it's even more important that the next generation is not brought up on hate and lies. This is extremely important. So that conditionality is still there on UNRWA is extremely important. That my amendment, my suggestion and nomination for Gina Mahsa Amini and the women of Iran to win the Sakharov Prize was an extremely important signal to the freedom movement of Iran, that we say that we see you, we haven't forgotten about you, and we will continue to do what we can to support you. Because unfortunately, media and many politicians can only have one crisis in their mind at the same time. We only looked at Iran, then we only looked at Russia, Ukraine, and now everyone is looking at Gaza, which is Iran's and Putin's goal with the whole attack, and that we need to be clear of. That's why we need to make sure that we don't forget that. That's one win. One more win was the creation of the first Abraham Accords caucus network within the European Parliament. The first time that the European Parliament stood for other peaceful solutions and supported other initiatives that didn't include the two-state solution. And that was important.
And you chaired the
And I was nominated by the speaker, the president of the parliament, to chair the Abraham Accords network. I mean, you can be for a two-state solution and for the Abraham Accords, which was an incredible. Just imagine what the situation would look like right now in the Middle East if we didn't have the foundation of the Abraham Accords to stand on.
David Lega, I learned that you are not running for the European Parliament, which is
yes.
pity for, I would say, the pro-Israel camp. What is the reason why you are not running?
The main reason is that my daughter is 3.5 years old, and she cries every time I put my suit on because she knows I'm gone for 4 days. And she has a right also to have a present father in her life. So I will absolutely continue to make the world as good a place I can, and I will continue to work for Israel. But I will find another way where I don't have to travel every week.
That's a good reason.
You know, I will tell you, 3 weeks ago I was in DC for a meeting with AIPAC and members of Congress and the Senate for discussing how to best support Israel and the aid package in the US. And before I left, my daughter said to me again, 3.5 years old, "Why are you going?" And she started crying. And my wife, we tried to say it easy and explain it to her. So she said, "Well, Daddy has to go and help the Jews," she said. And you know what my daughter said? She said, "Again?" And then she said, is it Putin? And I said, absolutely. She understands the connections that many of my colleagues don't understand.
Thomas, I said also in the tradition that the European Coalition for Israel has just presented its second annual vote ranking on issues related to Israel. I would like, if possible, to summarize this survey, which is very important for people to know, because when they're voting, who is in favor of Israel, which party, which political party, which party in each member states regarding the voting, also the voting since the 7th of October. So could you summarize, because we are short, we have only 27 minutes in this program, but I'm sure you can do it.
Thank you, Yossi, and also say to David that you leaving this parliament is a gain for your daughter, and we appreciate that. It's a loss for this parliament, but we also want to thank you on behalf of our viewers for all your wonderful work so far.
It's been my honor.
Yeah. So looking at the Israel ranking, we did the first ever last year, and we thought it would be important to do one just ahead of the European elections. So we are looking primarily at how the political parties are positioned, how they have voted in votes which are critical for the safety and security for Israel. We looked at this over a 5-year period, so the whole term. We have also looked specifically after October 7, what has happened. And finally, we added a new dimension, which is very relevant for today's program, and that is on Iran. So how do the parties line up when it comes to issues critical to the Islamic Republic, for example, banning the IRGC that we spoke about earlier. To summarize, and I obviously encourage everyone to go to the website ec4i.org and find the whole ranking, but we can say that it confirms what we've seen for a number of years already, that there is a clear left-right ideological divide. Parties on the center-right tend to be more pro-Israel, whereas those on the left are less so, and those in the extreme left are making up those parties which are most critical. I could mention, interestingly, that Vox from Spain is topping the list this year. David's party is doing very well. You are the most pro-Israel in the EPP group, which I want to commend you for. When it comes to nations, we also have a divide between what we used to call Old Europe and New Europe. Poland and Hungary and the Visegrad countries, including Czech Republic, are the most pro-Israel, whereas, not surprisingly, Ireland would be in a league of its own of being critical or anti-Israel, followed by countries like Portugal and Spain. We also have to remember that this can be measured usually in two ways: how the nations vote in the European Council, but since those votes are confidential, this is the best way where we in a transparent way can really measure the parties. Finally, the issues on Iran, there seems to be a clear convergence on how the parties relate to Israel, also as how they relate to the Islamic Republic. And so those countries that would be most anti-Israel, if you want to call it that, would at the same time be the most pro-Islamic Republic. We do know in some cases that here we have parties which are also funded by the Islamic Republic, and I think this is a matter for concern for us as an electorate to know also where the funding comes from. But I think this is important information as we now prepare for the European elections. Those who have a special heart for issues related to the Jewish people, I would really encourage everyone to take part of this. And also maybe just final point to say, because I know you mentioned AIPAC, David, and they were given this question in Washington that when they do their ranking and they say, but this party and that party, they think differently on issue A, B, C, D. This clearly only measures attitudes towards the state of Israel. So we're not trying to give any comprehensive view on all issues which may be important for the voter, but this is important information.
David Lega, regarding this survey, I think you have seen this the results of this survey, and what are your observations and comments on this? Do you think that this is also, as Tomas mentioned, this is also an indication maybe of what could happen with the election, with the next elections?
Well, I hope that I'm happy to see our results in the report, and also naturally that more people see it, because this is an extremely important issue, not only for the Middle East, not only for Israel, but also for Europe. We see an increased influence of Iranian authorities in our own institutions, in our member states. And honestly, we tried the soft approach with Putin. And where did that lead us? We cannot afford to be as naive again with Iran as we were with Russia. We know that they work together. We know that Iran sells drones and rockets to Russia. We know that Iranian weapons are used to kill Europeans. We know that Iran has the expressed goal of eradicating Israel from the face of the earth. And I cannot see how Europe, who was based on the ruins of World War II and the Holocaust, could ever accept that that is a mission of our regime. Because that's what led us here. And we need to continue to learn by our mistakes. The European Union is a peace project, and it changed Europe's future. And I'm very sure that the Abraham Accords is the start of the Middle East's European Union. And that's, if we allow it to continue to be that, that's where that will take us. But we also know that Iran is doing everything in its power to fight it.
We spoke about EU-Israel relations, which is at the core of our thinking, we saw in the beginning when the 7th October started, when this massacre, the pogrom in southern Israel started, we saw it as a game changer in EU-Israel relations, because initially the EU stood up in full support of Israel, but with the time and with the war in Gaza, this support faded a bit. But do you think, both of you, that I will start with you, David Lega, do you think that the current escalation in the conflict between Israel and Iran will affect EU opinions, also public opinions, but also the politicians' view on Iran?
Well, our member states are already supporting Israel and helping Israel to defend itself. So naturally, it has already changed it. But we must also accept the horrible situation for the people of Gaza. It's absolutely horrible, and we need to do what we can, as many do, to try to reduce the suffering there. At the same time as we must understand that the suffering there is Hamas' fault. They wanted this, they started it, and that can never be forgotten. But regardless, it's a horrible situation in Gaza that we also need to address.
Tomas, the same question.
Yes.
Something can happen because of the Iran Israel-Iran escalation, something could better the relations between EU and Israel?
It's again a debate inside me between the optimist and the pessimist. You know, the optimist would say that clearly we are going back to a few days after Gaza when Macron said that we need an international coalition to defeat Hamas. And now, as it's just 2 days away from the attack by Iran, that we are hearing a similar level of commitment. And we saw it also put into action, as David rightly mentioned. So I see positive signs that this could be a game changer, that finally the Western world, the free world, would understand that Iran is not only a threat to Israel, but to all of us who are living or want to live in free and democratic societies. But again, as you mentioned, you know, we tend to have these high, you know, it's high and low, and it requires so little for the enemies of Israel to find still another way to twist this around. I read an editorial just this morning, which again puts all the blame on Israel. I mean, Israel has just been attacked, and they're already accusing the government for wanting revenge. And when I hear the word revenge, which I don't hear in the Russia-Ukraine war, when I hear the word revenge always related to Israel and the Jewish people, it reminds me of a very deep anti-Semitic rhetorics that we've heard for such a long time. So I hope the optimist within me is right, and we can see a change.
This brings us to a close of this edition of the European Report. While the the last two programs have been about the European elections, which is normal, let us not forget that there are still 133 hostages held in Gaza, you know, after more than 193 days. Finally, I want to use this opportunity to say a big thank to you, David Lega, for not only for joining this program, but also for having been such an outstanding champion of all issues that are important for those who watch this program. Thank you so much. And thank you also to you, Tomas Sandell, founding the director of the European Coalition for Israel, for helping to promote better relations between Europe and Israel. Thank you so much. If you like this program, feel free to share especially the YouTube link with your friends and colleagues. My name is Yossi Lempkowicz, and this has been the European Report. See you next month.